Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Dr. Victor Olujimi, who specializes in orthopedic surgery and sports medicine. Vic, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate
it. We're going to get into a whole lot today. Listeners, this is a dear friend of mine. We went to school together, roommates, grew up in the Bronx as well, too, Bronx residents. So we're going to talk a lot about the come up and talk about like where you are currently today. A lot of those where you are right now. I know it did definitely come with a lot of time and effort and struggle and a lot of studying, which a lot of these listeners are going to want to know about. But before we dive into like where you are currently right now, could you give us a little backstory on where you come from?
So like you mentioned, I'm from New York. I grew up in the Bronx. So I did all my schooling out there. And I went to Cardinal Spellman High School. And then from there, I ended up going to Sacred Heart University. And, that's where our relationship starts and continues to this day, which is great. And, currently, like you mentioned, I'm a practicing orthopedic surgeon in New York, on Long Island.
Mm-hmm. Now, growing up in the Bronx, like, could you explain, some of the listeners, they're coming from all different places around the world. So could you explain, like, what was it like growing up in the Bronx?
You're bringing it back to a lot of different memories, but it's tough, right? Because when you grow up in the inner city, there's so many different pathways, right? You can take good ones, you can take bad ones. There's some intermediate ones, and really everything is about your dreams and what you prioritize, right? And sometimes I think you get lost there depending on what you prioritize or what you think is more important in life, until, maybe it's early enough or maybe it's too late. And, so, there was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of trying to figure things out and, what you want to do and, not do and things like that. But I would say it was a great experience, to be honest with you, because I think it fueled my personality for where I am now, because it gives you a little bit of grit, right? So that you can, figure things out and, move along.
And that obviously has helped you in your career. Like, could you give us a little backstory on your family? Where, culture-wise, where are they from?
So both my parents are from Nigeria and Africa.
Okay.
They moved here about 40 years ago. And, so I'm first generation here. They both started off in Harlem. Both my parents have medical backgrounds. They worked in laboratory. My mom's a nurse. And, so I have memories of, walking around the house with, my mother's stethoscope and my father's lab coat. And from there, we were there for a couple of years, and then we moved to the Bronx after that.
Now, when you talk about your family members being in the medical field, do you feel like that had a heavy influence on you currently today?
Yeah, it definitely did, because it's, usually you try to, emulate what you see, right? So that's what I saw. I remember my mom, holding a big textbook while she's reading for her classes, and, my dad doing the same thing, or they're coming home in their white outfits and their, nursing outfits and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if I think back, that's probably what I remember the most, or my mom being up late at night and sneaking out of my room to go, to go hang out with her and things like that. So, if I had to, it definitely played a strong role in my decision.
And that's good that you had, someone to kind of look at, in a sense, be like, okay, well, I see what they're doing. Maybe that's something I might want to get, take a part in, as time progresses. Now, do you feel that anything within your Nigerian culture has kind of influenced you in the role that you play now currently as a male, Black male, in a sense, being in where you are?
I would say that, one of the things that I would say, besides just being proud of my culture in general, is that there's a strong religious component, right, to it. And I think that the community of religion and belief played a strong role because, where I got to wasn't easy. It's not like, oh yeah, I decided to it and boom, I got there. There's definitely a lot of things I had to go through to get there. And that religious component, I think, through the culture and my parents and things like that just helped you to remain strong and steadfast. Where you knew that if this was supposed to be what you're supposed to do, that God would essentially navigate you there. And if
Mm.
not, you would find out soon enough.
Now, when you talk about struggles, you just mentioned that right there. That's something I want to kind of dive in a little bit more into. Like, could you tell us a little bit about some of those struggles you face on the come up to where you are right now?
Um, I would say some of it was, like I mentioned before, priorities, right? So I'm not going to sit and say, hey, I was the, you know, A student and in college and things like that. I wasn't as focused. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go to medicine and things like that. But, sometimes you are, you want to hang out a little bit. You want to do this, you want to do that, which
Mm,
kind of puts
mm,
things, on the back burner a little bit. And, I think the biggest part of that was that I saw that, oh, there's a balance, right? I don't
mhm.
have to, I can definitely do this and I can be academic and I can still go out and hang out with my friends. I just need to prioritize a little bit better. So once I learned that, I think that's what made it easier and, better for me to learn, personal management and time management. And, sometimes you don't learn that. That's what
Oh
college is
yeah,
about,
yeah.
right? you
And
know,
that's if you gravitate to that information, you know.
exactly. So, right, that can be presented to you, but it's a matter of taking it and applying it that makes the biggest difference. And, I kind of it was good that I was able to kind of figure out that balance. And I think that's definitely what helped me going forward.
Now I think about it right now, like you coming from the Bronx, obviously, it's a melting pot. You got all different cultures around you. You go to Sacred Heart University, right? How did you feel knowing that you potentially were the only Nigerian, of Nigerian descent in your class, or even possibly in your major? Like, how did that feel?
Um, it was a culture shock. I would say that, it's, one of the good things I would say is that when I went to Spelman is very diverse. You have
Mm,
you have Hispanics, African Americans, Asians, Caucasians, Italians, Irish, everything. And that even going to that school was a culture shock to me because I was used to, just being around, African Americans and Hispanic, just, what the population of my neighborhood was, right?
mhm, mhm.
You get there and you're meeting all these different people and you start talking to them and everybody has, you know, they sound a little bit different because, they're from this part of the Bronx and, they believe this because, they're from here. And, so even that was, a big culture shock to me. And I think, being a Sacred Heart was sort of another one. You kind of had to find your way and, how you grew up is different than other people grew up, how other people grew up. And, you know, there's always the thought that you need to be better, right?
Mhm,
You know,
mhm.
the idea of competition or showing that you're just as good as anyone else and essentially that you belong there, right? Not
Now,
that so
now I know in universities like that is something that people, the retention rate, people coming back, when especially when they get hit with that significant culture shock. Like, what made you say I want to finish my academic studies here at Sacred Heart University? Granted, this is an amazing university, but at the time, like you said, it wasn't as diverse at that point in time, and I know that it could play a major role in the way you and where you want to pursue your academics. So like, what made you say, I want to continue my academics here at Sacred Heart?
I would say that, as I got there, I started to meet a lot of different people. And I think that helped, was that I started to meet a lot of people that were from where we were from and who listen to the same music as you, who, are essentially from the same culture and things like that. So I think that helped a lot. And, I was fortunate to be a part of, a multicultural organization that gave me the colleagues and the friends and the mentors to stay, continue the studies there. And it's a great school. The academics there is great. I knew I was going to get the education I need. And I had good teachers too. I had teachers that were always pushing, okay, hey, look, what are you doing?
You got to figure it out.
Yeah,
you got 4 years.
Yeah, you got to figure it out. You did well on these tests. What's going on? So I think there was just a lot that played a strong role in it. So I lucked up. I was lucky that way.
Now, talk about your journey to medical school. Like, I know, like, obviously, you graduate, you get your diploma, you're like, I could just live with this 4-year diploma right here. But then you actually went on to medical school, and like, talk about how did you become a doctor? Like, what was that process?
So for me, after graduating from Sacred Heart, I applied to medical school. So I'd taken, I think, about 6 months to a year to study for the MCAT to get in. So during that time, I became an EMT, and I was doing that on the side along the same point studying for my MCAT to get in. So, once I took the test, I applied to all the medical schools, and the one that I chose to go to was Chicago Medical School. And mostly because, I had family out in Chicago and Illinois. So I thought it would be easier. I could cut some costs for med school because I wouldn't have to pay for housing because I had family nearby. So my first year of med school, I was actually driving like 35, 40 minutes between a family member's house and school. So I would have to leave at like 6 a.m. to make 7:30 classes. And then I would stay there till 2 and then try to drive back, pass out for a little bit, come back.
Oh, wow.
So I did that for a year, but with anything like that, it's not sustainable, right? You can try as much as you want to, but so, I ultimately had to, find an apartment, but I was able to kind of save enough to cut a little bit of cost. So, med school it's 4 years, 2 years of academics, 2 years of clinicals. And, the 2 years of academics is pretty general. You're just learning everything that you could possibly learn about medicine and doing your best to do well on the exams and get through that. And then the second half of it is the clinicals, where you get the opportunity to apply it across everything. So that's surgery, medicine, neurology, psychiatry, you name it. So it's sort of your general overview of what medicine is like for those 4 years.
Mm. Now, when you were studying, did you feel like it was diverse on the come up in medical school?
I was actually lucky that there was a very strong group of medical students that were there as well, from all different backgrounds. Some were African, Jamaican, Asian, and we kind of just, came together and we formed study groups and, did questions together. So the school was actually very diverse. There wasn't, any, high percentage of one ethnicity that was there, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody got along really well. Obviously everyone, you have your own clique and people who you hang out with, but the camaraderie was great at the school. So, it was actually a really good experience there.
Now, obviously, you could have went into several different fields in the medical field, but you obviously went to orthopedics. Could you explain a little bit more about what an orthopedics does?
So originally, when I went to med school, I thought I was going to be a pediatrician, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I was going to take care of kids. I was going to do family medicine. And But as I was doing my clinicals and things like that, I was just like, I don't know if this is for me. A lot of crying kids and stuff like that,
I mean, it starts to feel like that 30, 45-minute drive.
Yeah, Vic, Dr. O loves the kids, but
you got to take a time for pause for a second. Like, all right.
So once I figured that out, I was like, all right, I'm not, I know that's not for me. I thought about neurology because I just love the subject. I thought about cardiology because I love the subject. But I kind of got into one rotation where it was a surgery rotation. And I saw how a doctor can take everything that he's learned and apply it to his hands. And the pathology that he knows in his brain, through his hands, he can fix it. So that was powerful for me because it's not just like, hey, yeah, I know this, I know that, but hey, I know this and I know that, and I can fix that with my hands. So that's when I kind of knew that surgery was going to be the way that I would go. And one of my rotation was a general surgery rotation, and I did it at Cook County Hospital. So community hospital, middle of Chicago, level 1 trauma, which means that everything from, car accidents to gunshot wounds comes there. So I said, look, if surgery is going to be for me, I'm just going to throw myself into the toughest rotation. So it was the rotation that nobody wanted to go to, right? Because you knew you had to do work. And I lucked out there because one night I got sent to the operating room by one of the chief residents there, and they had me scrub with a Dr. Patel. And Dr. Patel was an orthopedic surgeon. So this is at like 2:00, 2:30 in the morning. This guy came in after a car accident and he had fractured his tibia or his shin bone, and we were going to fix it. So I go into the operating room with him and I look to the side, and on the table are hammers and screws and drills and nails. And I'm staring at the table and I look at him like, what is this? He's like, this is orthopedics. He's like, you never heard of orthopedics? And I said, no. So I spent, 2 hours with him and he let me do the case. He took me through everything and we fixed this guy's, broken bone. And that was it. That was it.
That was the game changer right there.
Yeah, that was it. And so I never got to see Dr. Patel again, but I do credit that man for the exposure and the timing. It changed my life essentially.
Okay, Dr. Patel, if you're listening right now, homie, just want to let you know, thank you for helping Dr. Olujimi. Okay. Now, when you were in that room, obviously you were still learning, right? There's a lot of pressure that you doctors do face on an everyday basis. You're talking about saving people's lives. In that situation, you talk about helping a young man walk again, right? Like, how do you deal with coping with that type of pressure? And even the pressure of just, telling someone like, hey, look, you might not ever walk ever again. Like, how do you build up to doing that every day?
I think a lot of it is confidence in yourself and what you do, right? You chose to be a doctor, you chose to be in this profession, and it is a constant learning process. So you're not just trying to learn how to do things, but you constantly have to improve self, both mentally and your skills, keeping up with those skills. And, once you start interacting with patients, a lot of it is about honesty. You have to be honest about what you can fix and what you can't fix. And, sometimes, unfortunately, things are what they are and you do your best. And as long as you're happy with that you did your best, then, it kind of makes it easier to do it on a day-to-day basis, to be honest.
Are you ever scared going into surgery?
So chance favors the prepared mind, right? So as a surgeon, we always know that we're prepped. You got to have plan A, plan B, plan C. A lot of times we work with representatives from different companies, because we put implants in people's bodies, whether it's metal or plastic. And you have to know what your reps have available. Does this one representative or technology consultant is what we call them now, do they have everything that you need, or do you need something else brought in, for plan B? And if plan A and plan B don't work, plan C, and sometimes even plan D,
Wow.
So
that's a lot of options on the table right there just for a couple hours.
Yeah, you got to, you have to think, especially in the world of a surgeon, you have to think that far ahead. And, you got to say, okay, I know this is what it is. This is how I'm going to fix it. But if I put that screw in, that screw breaks. Okay, what do I do next? Okay. Or you put the plate on and the plate doesn't fit the way you do. Okay, what other plates do we have? Or if you're fixing soft tissue, okay, I'm going to fix this rotator cuff, this way, and then it tears through your sutures. Okay, what do I do next? So
And obviously you're the person in the room. Everyone's following your lead. So you got to be a leader. So talk to us a little bit more about, because I know you're in sports medicine as well. Like, how does it feel to be in sports medicine as well? Like, how do you apply that?
It's fun for me. I played sports in high school. I played football, and I actually tore my ACL freshman year at Sacred Heart, playing at one of our fraternity football games.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gimping around my freshman year of college.
Look at that, already working on the leg.
Yeah, because I tore my ACL. So it's being the leader in the room, commands a lot. So you have to be confident in what you're doing, knowing what you do. We have fun when we're in the operating room. We have music in the background, people are talking, but you kind of have to know when to control everything, to say, okay, everybody stop. Let's get through this part. Once you get through the part, you know that this is the technical part. You get through, everything's good. All right, now it's smooth sailing from now. And then you keep going. So you create your atmosphere that helps you to be efficient and to work, under the conditions that work for you. But now, you have to command the room.
And commanding the room, obviously, you had a lot of leadership training prior to this day, where you are right now. But the operating room, I know that's obviously life or death at times. Do you feel that your operating room where you are currently right now is diverse? Like, what does that operating room look like? Or are you the only person of color?
No, my operating room is very diverse, which is great. I work with surgical techs from all different backgrounds. I work with nurses from all different backgrounds, anesthesiologists from all different backgrounds, nurse anesthetists from all different backgrounds. So to be honest with you, I love my operating room. I get different people all the time. They talk about, I learn from them, they learn from me. We put on a song and you see somebody in the background, oh, that's my jam,
That's beautiful. That's beautiful when your team could connect with you and your culture.
Yeah, and that's what I want, I want the room to feel that way, because a room that is run well but somewhat free-spirited, I guess, is nice. It takes away the stress of what you're doing, right? You know what you're doing, and there's always a time and a place. And if you command the room, you can always say, okay, guys, hold on, I need this, and this, let's get this going. And then it's kind of like everybody stops, does what you need to do, come back, you get yourself back in order. And then once everything is going well again, then okay, atmosphere picks up again.
Wow. Now, with all the stuff that you got going on, like what truly keeps you up at night? What got your brain running? Like, it doesn't shut off. I know you're in the medical field, so I know things are always coming up. And I know obviously we're dealing with a pandemic that has hit our world, our even our country, our state, our community. You could go dive that deep into it. Our schools, our universities, and obviously your profession. Like, what keeps you up at night?
I would say sometimes my patients keep me up at night. If I had a difficult patient that came in and I'm trying to figure out, what's going on or what to do with them, sometimes I'll be up late at night. progress keeps me up at night, right? I'm always thinking about, all right, I'm here, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. What's next? What's next for my personal growth? What's next for my professional growth? And then, I'm always thinking about my family too. You're like, okay, all right, I gotta take this one to T-ball on Saturday. This one's got soccer. There's dance on Wednesday. Okay, so I have to be out of work early.
You got to juggle.
Yeah, man. So, it's a combination of everything, but you go through those periods where you almost have to do, I call it the late night brain dump, where everything that's in my head, I'm just either putting it down on paper or typing away at my computer to get it out of my head so that way it's physical now and I can shut my brain down.
That's a very great way of putting it. I like that, the brain dump, because you're right. Especially in your profession, like the amount of patients you see in a matter of a day. And some patients, they're ongoing. So you got to still remember a lot of things. Sometimes you definitely need to write things out. That's one thing I know they taught us in business school, like just write out your ideas. But earlier when I mentioned about, building a vulnerable and positive platform, we allow our guests to, to just open up. And I really want to know, and I know the listeners want to know, like, as you were going through this process, like what was the biggest challenge you faced in your career and how did you overcome it?
I would say the biggest challenge for me was my transition from a fellow to an attending. So if I had to describe that to someone, it's kind of going from the apprentice, to the teacher. So, I did a fellowship in sports medicine, and then I did a second fellowship in shoulder and elbow, just because, the shoulder is a complex joint. I had some interest in it. So I did 2 fellowships. And once you're done with your fellowship, I remember that last day, my my mentor came after our last surgery, had me come outside, gave me a hug, gave me some words of wisdom, and that was it. And then it was like, you're on your own.
Woo! That's a scary one right there.
Yeah, because now you're going into, you spend some months finding a job, you get a job, you sign a contract, and then you start day one and everyone's like, okay, here's your first patient, And I remember my first week I was there, the guy came in with a broken clavicle. And, I'm looking at the x-rays, I'm like, well, that needs to be fixed.
And you're the person for the job.
You're the guy, right? So, that's where, you put on your big boy pants and your big boy boots, and you remember everything that you were taught, everything that you were learned, and you follow your steps, you follow your principles, and remain confident. And again, plan A, plan B, plan C.
Wow. And sometimes in other places, like we only have one option, plan A. But you're going in it with like several different options and knowing what each option potentially could do, whether good or bad. Now, you're a role model, at the end of the day. And a role model, not just for your people within the surgery room, but for your culture, for the community. How do you feel about being African-American male, being Nigerian culture, right? And being in the position that you are in right now? Like, what does that mean to you?
It's an honor and a blessing. In my field, unfortunately, the percentage of men and men of color, women in general, is on the lower end. Men of color represent probably about 3% of the orthopedic population. Women represent, I think, in total, probably about 6% or so. So there's a very small amount of us. And, we're scattered all over the place, all over the United States. So, to be one of the few and to be able to be successful and to get where I am is a blessing and an honor and something that I don't take for granted. So, I take the opportunity that when I walk into the room and they see that, you're a man of color and you're the orthopedic surgeon that's going to take care of them, that, sometimes you have to, there's a little bit of convincing that has to go on, to let them know that you know what you're talking about, you're capable of what you're doing, and that you were trained well, and that you're there to do the best job possible for them, and it makes it tough, right? Because you never know what reaction you're going to get from people when you walk
Yeah, how
in.
they gonna receive it?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's easy to tell, I'm face to face with you. It's very hard to hide emotions, except now with COVID, obviously it's hard. It's easier to hide emotions
Yeah,
or
get the
your
mask on.
facial expressions, right?
That's right. You can roll your eyes. I can see you roll your
Yeah,
eyes with the
exactly.
mask.
Exactly. That's about all you can get away with, these days. But, so, but I'm lucky that where I am, I'm very well received. I have great staff members, great administrators, great colleagues, and it's always been about patient care. That's the focus. And yeah, I've run into a couple of not so nice interactions with people, but I think at the end of the day, they see me for who I am and look beyond whatever judgments they might have had initially, and they understand what I'm there for, and they let me do that for them.
That is a very tough role to have at times when you are you're a leader at the end of the day, and like going into a room being a leader, trying to express to someone who might have a difference with you based off of whether your color or your background or your culture. And again, you like you just mentioned about proving yourself to someone. Like you have to find a way to keep your composure because other people are still following your lead, right? It's all about like just making sure that you set the room, the tone of the room, and making sure that like people follow through with that, you know. And I want to say that, one thing that you did talk about a lot during this time was about like your community, the surgery room, being at Sacred Heart University. Like, how do you build the right community around you? Like, how do you get that community? Obviously, one of the ways you could do it is by becoming a leader. You could then build your community based off of that. But like, what does that mean to you, building the right community?
That's a strong, that's a strong statement, and a tough thing to accomplish. I didn't just start here and automatically, I lucked out and had all the best people. I've gone through a lot of different assistants and, even, administrative people and things like that. But I think each one of them help guide you to building that community, right? Someone comes in and you're working with them and they're not the best fit, it doesn't work out, then for the next person what you're looking for, right? You're like, okay, here's my checklist, and this is what I didn't want last time, so this is what I'm looking for this time. And then, you fit that into your mold. And I also think it also depends on the person, right? People will gravitate toward certain personalities and they'll move away from them. So I think the atmosphere that, I create, helps gravitate certain types of people towards me. And because of that, we work well. And that's how I've developed my team since, starting. And, it's been great.
And you're doing an amazing job there, Vic. I mean, coming from the South Bronx, born and raised, growing up in that time frame where, the times is hard, and the struggles and stuff like that. But moving from the Bronx, going to Sacred Heart University, you went from a diverse area to not so diverse to now building your team that is diverse. So it was like hot and cold, and it went back to hot. You obviously went through a lot of struggles, along the way, in which I know the listeners are very are happy that you share that. You wanted something, and you were inspired at a very young age, and you actually just manifested what you believed in from day one. And to see where you are right now, to see you from school, to see you always with the books when everybody else was trying to out there party and live their best life. Vic was like, look, guys, I'm gonna be real with you. I'm gonna go study real quick, And I'm glad that you did, because to see you now in the place where you are, in the community, your family, it's an honor to see another individual finding success in what they truly do. So it's an honor to have you on the show today, Vic. Thank you so much for your kind words and your knowledge and the journey that you shared, man, because it's beautiful.
Yeah. I'm one of, a few out there who are doing the same thing. There are other, surgeons, African American females who are creating that social media platform to bring awareness to show who they are, and what they do and what their accomplishments are and things like that. I kind of follow their example. They've been kind of silent, you know, um, people who have inspired me who don't know it, but I think that's the good thing about this platform, right? Is that you're putting your content out there, and especially with you guys and what you're doing, you put it out there, you don't know who it's going to reach, but you know that your reach is vast. So, it's great. And, I'm glad that I could be a part of it.
Well, thank you again, Vic. To the listeners out there, if you want to hear more stories like Vic, check us out on ZakaConnect.com or follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcast. Again, Vic, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Paul. Great to hear from you again.